Something that happened last week that I believe everyone should read and understand. The White House has unveiled something called the National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism. It is something that is some sort of national level assessment on the threat posed and a prescription of how to deal with this domestic terror threat. This was written by White House people. This is not interagency. This is truly, I believe, a political paper. In their introduction, it defines what they're going after. Domestic terrorism is not a new threat to the United States. It has, over centuries, taken many American lives and spilled much American blood, especially in communities deliberately and viciously targeted on the basis of hatred and bigotry. Over the Civil War and after, for example, the Ku Klux Klan waged a campaign of terror to intimidate black voters and their white supporters and deprive them of political power, killing and injuring untold numbers of Americans. The Klan and other white supremacists continued to terrorize black Americans and other minorities in the decades that followed. In recent years, we have seen a resurgence of this and related threats in one horrific incident after another. The shooting and killing of 23 people at a retail store in El Paso. The vehicular killing of a peaceful protester in Charlottesville. The shooting and killing of 3 people at a garlic festival in Gilroy. The arson committed at a mosque in Victoria, Texas. The appalling rise in violence and xenophobia directed against Asian Americans. And the surge in anti-Semitism and more. You'll never guess who bears all the responsibility for those things. And by the way, what happened to all of the what happened to all the shootings and everything else that happened over the summer? It's just mysteriously gone in this. Domestic terrorist attacks in the United States have also been committed frequently by opposing our government institutions. In 1995, the largest single act of domestic terror in U.S. history, an anti-government violent extremist detonated a bomb at the Alfred Murrah building in Oklahoma City, killing 168, including 19 children, and injuring hundreds of others. In 2016, an anti-authority violent extremist ambush shot and killed 5 police officers in Dallas. You know what's really weird? That was at a BLM rally, but you won't find anything at the whitehouse.gov that is less than positive of BLM. In 2017, a lone gunman wounded 4 people at a congressional baseball practice. A lone gunman? Yes, he was alone, but it was politically motivated. He was a Bernie Sanders Marxist supporter. Months ago, January 6, 2021, Americans witnessed an unprecedented attack on its core institution of our democracy, the U.S. Congress. Well, it's not really unprecedented. In the 1980s, there was a bombing of Congress done by leftists, but why quibble over aspects of this? So they talked about how the Department of Justice historically created and immediately focused on prosecuting and convicting hundreds of Klan members in connection with their vicious campaign of domestic terrorism. Yes, it was a Republican Congress and Republican administrations that did that. It was the Democrats that later came in and undid all those things. In the 1980s, joint terrorism task forces, now a nationwide staple of federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement cooperation against all forms of terrorism, were created to maximize information sharing and address the full range of terrorist threats, both domestic and international. While domestic terrorism roots and elements of our response may be long-standing, domestic terrorism is persistent and evolving. And according to the U.S. intelligence community and law enforcement, elevated in the threat that it now proposes. That's why this national strategy for countering domestic terrorism provides an overarching approach to address today's manifestation of domestic terrorism threat, as well as the evolving forms that the threat may take in the years ahead. Let me just skip to page 11 here, if I can. I think this paragraph is really interesting. Their approach to address domestic terrorism. We will build a community to address domestic terrorism that extends not only across the federal government, but also to the government's critical partners. That includes state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. Okay. As well as foreign allies. Okay. And partners in civil society. The technology sector. Wait a minute. Academia. And more. Domestic terrorism and the factors that contribute to it pose a challenge best tackled by a set of interlocking communities that can contribute information, expertise, analysis, and more to addressing this multifaceted threat. Oh, okay. With the right orientation and partnerships, the federal government can energize, connect, and empower those communities whose input was critical to the formulation of this strategy itself. So, did you talk to the people in tech? Did you talk to Facebook about this and Google? Because that's what that says here. Did you go to academia and say, "Hey, can you report on the students that are maybe concerning you, that they're not all for this, this evolution of Marxism in America?" Is that They will focus specifically on violence and factors that contribute to it, while respecting civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy protections. Oh, okay. All right, so they're going to somehow or another uphold the Bill of Rights while violating the Bill of Rights. Okay. Well, they will recognize them and maximize the positive benefits of modern communications technology, such as the Internet. Oh, well, that sounds great, too, doesn't it? Now, they have 4 pillars on this. They need to gather the information and enhance the way the government can gather information, and then do some research and analysis on those things. Then improve the information sharing across all levels within and as well outside of the federal government with their tech and academia partners. Then they're going to illuminate transnational aspects of domestic terrorism. Wow, that would have been nice if we would have had that while we were dealing with Muslim extremism. Wouldn't that have been? They're going to strengthen domestic terrorism prevention, resources, and services. Well, with their international partners and their internet partners, that's just not going to be hard to prevent domestic terrorism. I mean, the FBI did such a great job on January 6th, didn't they? What could possibly go wrong here? They're also going to start to go after voices that they say are online terrorists. Now, I know what a terrorist is. Stu, are you pretty clear that you know what a terrorist is?
I would say I do know, but my guess is I have a different definition than maybe some others.
My guess is that, too. Recruiting and mobilizing individuals to domestic terror occurs in many settings, both in person and online. And these activities are happening on internet-based communications, including social media, online gaming platforms, file upload sites, and end-to-end encrypted chat platforms, even as those products and services frequently offer other important benefits. The widespread availability of domestic terrorist recruitment material online is a national security threat whose front lines are overwhelmingly private sector online platforms. And we are committed to informing more effectively the escalating efforts by these platforms to secure those front lines. Oh, well, that's great. And they're going to do that while ensuring your right to free speech. This is the beginning of a trap. It is also a beginning of a fundamentally different America, one that the federal government believes that it can partner with social media and Google and gather information on you and all those that talk to you. For instance, Google has been putting together an algorithm that shows those people who disagree with critical race theory. And if you disagree with it or if you say something derogatory about it, well, then your name is put on a list. But also all those that follow you, because you may have infected them. There are no secrets anymore. And the only ones that have secrets that are protected are those that are in power. And they are using our social media and our connections with each other and their new twisted view of what an extremist is. An extremist today is somebody who says, you know, the Juneteenth thing, it's fine. It's a great holiday. I'm in Texas. I like the holiday. But it's not a replacement for July 4th. And what happened over the weekend was insulting and so sub-American. If that's what you want to do, to celebrate freedom, I'm sorry, I'm going to stick to my hot dog and fireworks on July 4th. It's disgusting. That doesn't denigrate the meaning behind Juneteenth that Texas put in a long time ago. It's a great holiday, but it's not the 4th of July. That makes you an extremist today. That makes you an extremist. And so you're listening to this broadcast now. If you have Alexa, they know you're listening to this broadcast now. If you're online listening to us, they know you're listening to it. If you comment on anything that I ever post or comment, referring to any of the things we talked about, you're also on a list. But they're going to ensure your right to free speech. By the way, while the president was off at the G7 summit, doing only God knows what, besides embarrassing us, while he was at the G7 summit, the White House also released a new little hotline. Now, this is the third time it's been tried, and both times Americans have stood up against it, and it went away. This time, I don't think it's going to. And will Americans stand against it? The new little hotline is to report neighbors and family that you think might be extremists. Now, how many of us have a family member who hates our guts, or we hate their guts? I hope to God not. That think this person is so dangerous. This person is just dangerous. How many people look at their family members who are Trump supporters and say they're off their rocker, they're insane, they're on the road to domestic extremism? I can guarantee a lot. Now the federal government is asking you to turn in your family members and your neighbors. This is not American. This is what happened in East Germany, and it must be stopped by you speaking out. You must speak out. And for God help us. We cannot turn each other in, or we will lose everything it means to be an American.